Welcome back to another episode of the Dear BLK CEO Podcast. And as always, thank you all for tuning in. Super excited for today's show for a number of reasons. I know everybody that listens and that tunes in quite regularly wants to know how to break the code of creating generational wealth and time freedom. Well, today we've got a very interesting gentleman who has successfully achieved both of these feats by orchestrating his life around 4 freedom principles. And he did it in a systematic way using unconventional wisdom, which we'll talk a little bit more about on today's show. He's a father, he's a philanthropist, an explorer of about 100 countries, former senior exec in corporate America, real estate investor and entrepreneur, and a recently retired police officer. And his name is Maurice Philogene. Mo, welcome to the show, my friend.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I've been wanting to do this for a while, so it's my pleasure.
As have I, my friend. I mean, I look at you as a big brother on a number of different levels. And where I want to start the conversation is when you think about entrepreneur, especially as popular culture today sells it to us, there is a narrative of you need to make millions in order to be financially free. Said another way, make millions so you can get the supercar or you can get the $30,000 watch. And I myself at times have honestly fallen victim to this belief set, if you will. But when I look at your social media, when I look at some of the content that you post regularly, I see something completely counter to that. I see a man who knows who he is. I see a man who's very clear on his passions and is living them out. I see a man who has really tapped into holistic peace. And you did it by actually leveraging a job, right? To get passive income to a level where it exceeds your liabilities. Talk to us a little bit about that, man. And if you don't mind, explain why you think so many people get it wrong.
The culture is off base around entrepreneurialism. And, you know, all the things that you just said, getting the cars, having 30 million in the bank and all those types of things, it is okay for certain people. But what social media has done has taken that blueprint and made it the goal for everybody else. And that's a problem. It's the same manner that formal education, grade school, high school, college, makes the blueprint becoming a corporate whatever, working for 40 years, getting a 401k and leaving. None of it is a blueprint. People just need to realize that and kind of bust out of the matrix a little bit on both sides. So for me, the word that has always stuck with me since my early 20s was freedom, flat out. And you referenced those freedom principles at the beginning. I'm going to say them now because they will backbone our conversation. Financial freedom, time freedom, geographic freedom, freedom to execute on your purpose, and freedom to build meaningful relationships with people like yourself. In the financial freedom space, I came to understand in my early 20s that as long as you have more passive income than you have expenses, you can be free. There are people who generate $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 of passive income a month and have $3,000, $4,000 worth of bills. In my mind, they are freer than the CEO who has $20 million but is stuck going to the office every day. So I think the notion of entrepreneurialism nowadays, outside of driving impact to community, when it has moved on to you need this amount of money to be free, millions? No, you don't. I got guys and gals who are making $4,000 off of two condos, living in Thailand, having 6 kids and living the life, you know? So that would be my kind of definition of freedom and why that notion of entrepreneurialism is off base a bit.
Very well said. So in 2002, you began your journey relative to acquiring properties that were cash flow positive while working full-time jobs. Talk to us a little bit about the clarity of mindset in terms of what you were building. And I want you to talk about clarity because I think these days we're constantly bombarded and barraged by ads saying, hey, you can make X amount doing this with Facebook fulfillment. You can make X amount by launching an e-commerce store, cryptocurrency. How do people tap into a clear sense of what they're building, what they actually want, and then find the vehicle to get there? Because you've done that with your real estate portfolio over the past decade and a half or so.
Yeah, and real estate is a tool. It's not a destination. The restaurants I own are a tool. They're not destinations. The development projects I'm doing in the Mediterranean right now, they are a tool and not a destination. And I just want to throw out, like I just said, oh, I'm doing development projects in the Mediterranean. That's not for money. That was because I wanted to be an active businessman in a community that had nothing to do with East Coast. I'm born in New York, raised in Boston, live in DC. I want to operate on that side of the world. So the tool for me was connecting with someone who's doing something over there and being a part of it.
Mhm.
Had nothing to do with money. When I was in my early 20s, I picked up Personal Finance for Dummies, that series of books. There was a paragraph in there, I still haven't gone back to look, I need to find it, that talked about passive income and the notion of having more passive income than expenses would provide you time freedom, because you're divorcing your need to physically be anywhere to make money. It's stuck, brother, in a big way. So that led to, I bought my first place when I was 23 years old. It appreciated 30 grand in 3 months because there was a boom cycle going on back in the early 2000s. That floored me. Pops said, you just made 30,000, and he explained equity. No Google back then. You go to the library. So I went to the library in one sitting. I just got there in the morning. I left sometime after dinner. I read 10 or 11 books. And then by the end of the year, I had bought 10 to 12 more places. I don't know the exact number anymore.
Wow.
Because I picked up on something. Assets. Assets spit passive income. Passive income covers your basic needs and ability to live. If you can cover your basic bills and ability to live, you are free to access life and this planet the way the good Lord intended you to. What gets in the way is consumerism, competition with your peers, the fact that we've been told we have to be the CEO and the valedictorian to be successful. I somehow figured that notion out in my 20s, and it led to my 46-year-old self thanking my 23-year-old self for taking actions to go after it. So I've always had this definition from the beginning, and I still execute on it today.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you talk about your 46-year-old self and your 23-year-old self. I've recently started living my life in 10-year increments, meaning I'm thinking about 40-year-old Carl, right? And where he'd like to be, what he'd like to be experiencing, what quality of life he'd love to provide for the family, and backing into what decisions 30-year-old Carl in today's present time needs to make in order to get there. And it leads me to my next question. I'm super interested to get your take on this. What is your philosophy on time? Like, do you buy into time being this linear construct that we're sold on? Or do you think that it's non-linear and things don't actually take the amount of time that we're led on to believe that they're going to take? You know what I mean? Because I think that detracts a lot of people that detracts a lot of people from going after certain things.
That's interesting. I took two definitions. As I had one definition in my head when you said that, and then when you talked about things taking longer or less time, then something else popped in my head. So the first thing that popped in my head is the greatest man mistake has ever made is believe that he has more time. We don't. People think we have this abstract 100 years to live. We don't. You've maybe seen it on posts I've done, but I've posted about the average person lives for 79 years. It's 28,000 days. I'm 46. I have about 11,200 left if I'm lucky. So I act appropriately, which is why I retired from everything this year, right? People see their lives in days and see it ticking down. You'll behave different. You'll behave different. So that's the first thing around time. The second thing around time is directly proportional to the effort you put into it. I'm going to say that again. Time is directly proportional to the effort you put into it. Because everything that I did in the real estate realm, as an example, and I want to get off of real estate because real estate is not everything that I am, but everything that I did in the real estate realm from 02 to 15 was up to 35 single family homes. It was very slow. It was inefficient. I used my paychecks and combined it with passive income from some of the real estate to systematically pay them off over the years, where I ended up with a portfolio of 18 paid off homes, okay? It took a long time, but you know what has changed? When I met my current business partners and we started Quattro Capital, it's been 2 years. and we did 21 apartment complexes together, partnered with, I don't know how many investors we have now, 300 investors. I think I've helped people invest $40 million over the last 2 years. People, the effort that the collective of our 5 partners plus all these investor partners put in made things go like that.
Yeah.
And the moment you couple with like-minded people, or people who are better than you, or people who are truly trying to help other people, your goals and your passions move faster.
Yeah.
You can eclipse time by getting around the right people, the right situation. And I learned that over the past 2-3 years or so.
Yeah, that's very well said. I think also, when you get around like-minded people, your energies sort of come together, right? There's symbiotic energy that can be directed towards a common goal and help you take down that common goal, and also at scale. You mentioned going from the single units to the multi-units that you guys are doing over there at Quattro.
It's crazy, Carl. And I'll say about, I don't know where I am in real estate numbers anymore, but it's well over 1,000 units that I've been involved in, and I think I've sold and come back up and all these. And it is still always predicated on freedom, but more so now, man, it's predicated on how that particular deal helps people. So we closed the deal yesterday. It was 276 units, $25 million. We raised $11 million to do it. So we're closed. I know what the business plan is inside and out. And the quality of life for those people who live in that complex, the rent is like $500 or $600. It'll go up to like $800-900. Nobody's gonna move, because the quality of life is gonna be so worth that extra $100 to $200. That makes me happy, because what they're living in now, they shouldn't be living in that. I want them to have granite countertops, nice appliances, new flooring, doors that actually close, and all that type of stuff. But then my investors get passive income and equity for their families. Then I get a little bit of money and legacy for my family. Like, it just, you think about it from that perspective, and it just blows up. Yeah. So the time thing you're saying, it's people, and it's focusing on purpose, and money becomes a byproduct of you doing good things, right?
Right.
And I've made more in the last 3 years than I did in the first 17.
What I'm getting from you is it's really about focusing on the tool that you leverage and how that tool can benefit the greatest amount of people.
Yes, big time. Because I'm not even the one finding the deals anymore, right? I support people who find them. I will sign loans. I will coach. I will make sure our property managers are executing appropriately. I am supporting people who are coming into the real estate space for their own families, right? Mm-hmm. And benefiting from it. So I don't know, it's just business has become a very much a life-oriented goal pursuit, fulfillment endeavor that now, as a consequence of doing good, generates a significant amount of capital. And here's one other thought. I used to think that, Mo going to the soup kitchen was a feat. Like, oh, I did something good. You know what's even better than that? Because there's nothing wrong with that. And feeding someone. You know what's even better than that? The fact that I can generate 100,000, 200,000, 500,000 and bring it with me for local causes in DC, or when you see me floating around Lebanon or whatever, helping autistic people in Lebanon who have no resources, right? Like, I can impact whole communities for a decade.
Yeah.
That's the dopest thing that I've ever come across. I feel blessed about it.
Man, you just hit the nail on the head. My fiance and I last night were watching this documentary on homelessness. And it was a really interesting documentary because the way it was shot and the way it was filmed, you really got to tap into the humanity of these folks. And in our area here in Denver, we see a lot of homelessness, and we're like, we should go volunteer. And it's probably something we'll do. But the idea that struck my mind was, you really ought to spend some more energy and some more time towards growing some of these assets, Carl, because once you do grow them, you can take that fruit and you can actually give in a way that's going to drive more impact versus a one-off hour and then a pat on the back and you go home to your plush life or whatever. So I love that you touched on that.
I am okay. Our common friend, Jerome, right? First podcast interview I ever did in August of 2019, I pulled out of my wallet. It's in my wallet still, but it's a $50 million check that I wrote to myself
Mm.
a few years ago. I did it because I saw Jim Carrey in an interview and he wrote that $10 million check to himself. And that hit me. So I wrote it. I can cash it. It's going to be cashed in a couple of years. But I'm going to write myself a bigger one. And that's not even my money. It's not mine. A majority of it belongs to society, and then a small portion will go to my 2 kids for their legacy. I am doing what I think I was intended to do on this planet by building wealth and distributing it in the manner I want to distribute. That's the one selfish thing I get. If I want to go do it in Lebanon, I do it. If I want to do it in DC, I do it. If I want to go to the Arctic and help the Swami people in northern Finland, where I've been a couple of times, I'll do that too. Yeah, I do it in my own way, man. It's a blessing.
It is a blessing indeed. So let's talk a little bit about some of the recent occurrences in your life. You know, you recently exited your senior executive job in corporate America. I believe you were a consultant at one of the big 5, and recently left your duties as a public servant, as a cop in Metro DC.
Yeah.
First and foremost, how did you manage or steward your time between those two for all these years? And then what ultimately prompted the exit? Because Lord knows you could have left a long time ago.
I think that's fair. I probably could have left working in 2014, maybe a little bit earlier. I was always an executive at Accenture. That's where I worked for 25 years. I got hired by then Anderson Consulting in 1997, and then the name changed in 2001. I was always there. So just to be clear, so that's been the backbone of my professional career. I was also, however, a military officer in that I had an ROTC scholarship. There were too many officers coming out nationwide in 97. They let me go Guard Reserve. I went Air Force Reserve effectively. But in there, I became a military police commander for the first 4 years. And then after that, I got recruited to be a federal agent. So think NCIS or the FBI, but in the Air Force. So that's what I did. It's called Office of Special Investigations. So while that was a reserve position per se, by the nature of what we do, you're a full-time credentialed federal agent who's all over the planet doing a bunch of crazy nonsense. And then in 2008, after my stint of being on active duty post 9/11, 2002 to 2004, I struggled going back to corporate America. Like, I was helping all these people around the planet, and then you put me in an office and tell me to increase the revenue of a company. That didn't resonate with me at all anymore. But I had a great boss who when I went to her, she said, "You're going to give up 80% of your salary to go be a street cop?" I'm like, "Yeah, because I'm good at it. And I think I can help people." And the way it all manifested, she found a way for me to do both. God bless her. I just saw her 2 weeks ago for the first time in 10 years. Hugged her like nobody's business. Because it took me on this journey where for 5 years, I was a full-time cop at night, full-time exec during the day. No one outside of my immediate family knew about it because I was literally taking days off to catch up on sleep. And over time, I started to share a full-time position with another officer. So I became a part-time officer, but fully credentialed. I kept all these things for years because I needed it. I needed to be a servant. It was fun. It was good. I liked having the authority in my local community to snap somebody up if they were doing something stupid. I did. But I also liked 2:30 in the morning. My job as a midnight patrol officer was to let people like Carl sleep in ignorance and bliss while the dumb stuff is going on out in the street. And clearly I didn't need it for the money. I did it because I wanted to be a meaningful part of my community. And that's how all the careers kind of meshed, and real estate investing was there along the entire way.
Before we get into the exit a little bit more,
Yep.
I'm curious if you can shed some light on what you just said there, because I think it's so powerful. And I think as a civilian, I don't think about it all that often, right? The fact that police officers are out there patrolling and doing what you did for all those years, people like me get to rest our heads easy at night. How did you feel about all the backlash that police officers took, especially over the last 18 months with everything going on?
Yeah, so I'm in the crux of it, right? I'm a police officer on one side, and I'm a black male on the other side. like you're in the middle of the whole thing. A lot of it was warranted. George Floyd, I mean, he was murdered, like flat out. And there's other cases of that as well, but that is not my profession. I'm very protective of the law enforcement profession because I see the good that happens every day. It's very difficult. So there are, asshole cashiers at McDonald's. That doesn't mean that I don't go to a different McDonald's, right? It's the same thing in law enforcement as well. I need those people who are negative impactors to get the F out, because we're not actually even law enforcement, we're community protectors. So it affected me in that I knew that what I was doing, I barely got sleep from it. Most of my colleagues don't get sleep when they work midnight because they got families, they got to wake up. But if we're driving around a neighborhood at 3:00 in the morning proactively, like I would always do, no one tells me to do it. I would just do it. In my time over those years, I probably stopped or caught 5 or 6 burglaries from happening just by being proactive and rolling through neighborhoods in the middle of the night. It's never going to be on the news. It's never going to be on the news that I carried a woman who was wheelchair bound down 7 flights of steps in a fire. It's never going to be in the news.
It doesn't sell. No,
of course it doesn't sell. So when people come to me and they're like, oh, you protect policing, and no, I'm not protecting bad anything. A lot in law enforcement needs to shift. The advent of the body-worn camera shed a lot of light on it. You can imagine the light that would be shed if you put body-worn cameras on military personnel in a wartime environment as well. That's just, it is what it is. But there is so much good in law enforcement, I have a hard time forsaking all of it, because I was part of the 99% who were doing the right things. But one more thing, just as a Black man, I did have to teach my 21-year-old autistic son how to conduct himself when he's pulled over by a police officer. I shouldn't have to go help people on one hand and then teach my son how to not be murdered on the other hand, right? And white dudes from my shift, and I want to say that because they came with me to help teach him. They pulled him over. They put their hands on their gun so Jalen would have a feeling of what it was like, how to behave, what to say. I had my shift mates do this for me. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, lots needs to change in law enforcement and policing. But when people ask me, and I can feel myself getting welled up now, when people ask me, they need to understand that I've been on the road for 15 years with men and women who are Black, white, yellow, red. And all I've encountered is people who put their lives on the line for my neighbor and my neighbor's neighbor. So it's a very touchy thing for me.
Yeah, very well said. I wanted to ask the question too, because I think that there has been this shift towards demonizing law enforcement or community service people, as you say, because it, again, is fed to us through mass media and popular culture. And I feel as though people have lost the ability to consume content responsibly and to think freely about what some of the ulterior motives or agendas may be behind the content that is being shown to them. So it's very good to hear that perspective.
Yeah. Denzel Washington said it best, didn't he? The news media doesn't care about being factual. They care about being first. They'll just put crap out there. And I'll kind of wrap up that whole thing by saying we're going to talk about exit. I retired from being a police officer this year on September the 30th, and I cried when I retired. It's a good career. I had to leave because you leave your house at 8:30 at night. You go to the station, and normally we break roll call just like you break a huddle on a football field, and you go out and you do good things. The environment changed it where you break roll call and you go behind the station and you sit in your car and you watch a movie. Because you're so demonized and you don't want to get in trouble. You don't want to be on a camera. And then the leadership in any department, if they have to throw you under the bus, they will. You clearly know I didn't need to be a police officer for the money. So there's something about it that drew me there. I would have stayed for another 10 years at least. But the laws in Maryland in specific change by which a where the environment shifted so much that you as a police officer, if you make a mistake against a particular policy, you can be found liable personally now. So where is the incentive to go be a good human as an officer when you're getting paid 60 grand to be the butt of everybody's
That's the issue. So how do we ever get good police in?
Well,
And
right
everybody
now,
says defund. Everybody says defund.
well, it's turning around. You can see it. You can see it because murder rates have gone up everywhere and criminal things. And listen, there's so many things for this, but I guess what I want to get across to your audience is like, nah, there's a lot of problems, but there's so much good, and you can only beat on a nail with a hammer for so long until that nail is like, I'm out.
Yeah.
I left. I should be in my community still patrolling, and I'm not, because it's so bad that I was like, look, man, I'm 46. I have enough money. I'm not going to risk personal liability. I'm sorry, community. I wish I could be there, but it's time to go. And that really hurt me this year, actually.
Well, I mean, Mo, I commend you for prioritizing yourself. I think the one thing that's clear in that story you just told is that you've been very selfless, and you continue to be in other aspects of life, you know, relative to some of your initiatives in business. But I want you to talk to the audience specifically about the exit. I think there is a lot of confusion and angst and just a lot of emotion wrapped up in when to leave and when it's appropriate and how to do it, and am I making a mistake? You know, I think for a lot of people, their title in corporate and the roles and responsibilities that come with that title become a big piece of their identity. So it can kind of be this death. That's what it was for me, at least. You know, I was a medical device sales professional for a really great company, and I wore it like a badge of honor. And when I left, I was like, oh man, who am I now? So can you share a little bit about what that's been like for you? You're such a deep guy. I'm just curious to hear.
That emotion that you had when you left is valid. I've had the same emotion. It's more powerful from a policing perspective and from the military than from corporate for me, per se. But I'm very complimentary of my experience at Accenture because what it gave me and all the experiences that I had, and also what they let me do outside of work. People can go read about it on LinkedIn. I post about it all the time. I went back and tried out for the NFL again. I deployed for 2 years with the military. I worked in 7 countries for them. It's a long thing, but I'm very complimentary. But, however, Sir John Templeton, who's one of the greatest investors in our time, said it best: everything corrects itself. The market crashes every 5 to 7 years in some capacity. When you are a military officer or enlisted professional, there is a point in your career where you have to leave. You don't have a choice. If you are in corporate, you will eventually age out, or you will be replaced by someone who is younger with new age skills or something. It will happen eventually. It's just a matter of time. Everything corrects itself. I was very aware of that. So as I was creating all this passive income over the years and recognizing that we only have a certain amount of time on this big, beautiful planet, even though this year I was making the most active income I've ever made, like 350 plus, I was making a ton of money. I left. I retired from Accenture on October 31st of this year. I retired from the police department on September 30th of this year. And I retired from the military begrudgingly in October of 2019. The reason why I left now, when my power was so high, it's time. There are other things we have to accomplish in life other than, hey, Carl, my title is executive vice president, so I am a better person than you. No, I'm not. It's just titles. In the end, no one really cares, nor does your company, because everybody is expendable. The mission goes on without you. You are a cog. Everyone's a cog. It does not mean we don't do well while we're there and be appreciative. But I was very, very, very conscious of, I've been to 100 countries over 300 times. I immerse myself in cultures all over the place. And my brain is very full with all the activities of my W-2 employment. I got cases in court I got to go to. I need to talk to this client from my consulting firm. I needed all that to go away to finish my next set of goals. Philanthropy related, not money related. in basic terms. So it was time to exit. What I did, one last thing, what I did over my career that was really good for me, that I am trying to communicate to people, I never cared about the titles, ever. At Accenture, I was asked to enter, I won't say I turned down partner, I was asked to enter the partner process 4 times since 2013. My last promotion was 2013, 8 years ago. Damn, you were the same level for 8 years? Yep, purposefully. I didn't enter it because the 200 solid that I was making was enough. Mm-hmm. I was impacting my clients. It was enough. And I was taking 70% of my salary and investing in assets like real estate and passive paying restaurants. So I would be prepped for my correction. So it was enough. When people go to the next level out of purpose, I understand. But when people go to the next level out of competition because they're seeing their peer do it, and thereby, instead of working 40 hours a week, now you're working 70 hours a week and going to networking events and kissing people's butts and all that type of stuff, it is nonsense, because it's going to correct at the end and you're going to be gone anyway. So, yeah, I was just very intentional and aware of what I was doing my entire 20-year career, 25-year career. And I give myself credit for that, but that's why I've exited everything this year. I got other shit to do.
Yeah, you got other shit to do and not that much time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
and I can't imagine, well, I can a little bit, but the pricelessness of having that mental capacity and that bandwidth back. Ooh, I mean, if you will, Mo, like, humor us. Give us what a day in the life of Maurice Philogene is like waking up, looking out towards the Mediterranean, not having to worry about that baggage from a job.
I have zero baggage. I have zero. I mean, I just reflected on it. Outside of God and my parents, no one can tell me what to do. No one, ever, for the rest of my life. No one. And I will make sure that that stays that way. That is not an ego thing. That is not an anything. That is I am so protective of my time. I'm going to execute it the way that I want. And I partially have that power because I have a lot of passive income coming in. That's the first thing. The second thing about freedom of mental capacity, listen, I'm saying this from just learning it over the last 2-3 months. I did not realize how full and stuffed my head was with W-2 activity. Clients, court cases, patrolling at night, just all these things. And as soon as I left, I could feel just space emerging in my mind for more creative things. That might sound a little bit weird, but I'm actually being dead serious. So I am now doing real estate development stuff in the Mediterranean for the reason I told you. I want to be part of the business community over there. How do I get it? Who do I talk to? What relationships do I need to build to be the next thing that I want to be? I had a conversation with an amazing man from a particular, I won't say a particular, it's not a media outlet, but they insert reporters, if you will, into underrepresented communities around the world, Lebanon, India, Brazil, because I have a passion for small communities that have no voice, if you will. How do I impact that with my philanthropic work? So for the last month, I've been scouring LinkedIn for the right person to connect with, like literally using the platform as it should be used. And I finally had a conversation with this gentleman 2-3 days ago, and I can potentially sit on the board of directors. I can be a donor. I can use all my contacts across the world to help that particular cause. I just have, and I'm a better father. I'm available. And I know that my youngest son, who is 8 years old, I've got like 7 more years with him till he just doesn't really care, right? Once you get to 15 and 16. It's just availability, man. And my creativity and awareness of people and the world has just increased because I made the conscious choice to don't worry about more money, worry about the time and the impact that it'll have on your life and those of others.
That's well said. Yeah. going back to your sons and fatherhood, I'm not there yet, but I've got to imagine that's probably a pretty special thing that is an extra chip on your shoulder. The fact that you're not slave to a job, you're not tethered to a desk, and you can actually be there for your boys. But more importantly, like, show them, teach them by demonstrating what it looks like.
I've always been a traveler. I never travel as a tourist. My success factors for a trip is, do I know the local shop owner? Does a taxi cab driver know who I am? I always, like, one of my things is to get taxi cab driver's phone number and only use them while I'm in town. That's how you impact them, right? My 8-year-old sees this stuff. Yeah. He's like, Dad, when's the next time we're gonna go immerse in another culture? Well, guess what, son? I'm looking at Greenland. Well, where is Greenland? Well, let's go downstairs at the wall map and check it out. We tried to get there for New Year's right now, and it's cost prohibitive, and because it's dark there, it's winter and all that. So, and we can't get through the icebergs and stuff, which is what I want to do. So we're doing it in the summer, and we've planned it. I am just intentional. The other thing is my 21-year-old who is high functioning autistic, but he's training to be a professional bodybuilder now. He lives in Atlanta. For the first time in my life, I don't have him with me, and that's problematic for me because he's living down in the neighborhood of his mom's family. So I have a rule: once a month at a minimum, everybody has to see each other. Me, my youngest son, and my oldest son, because that's the conglomerate in my family, right? So I will either go to Atlanta or Jay will come up here, or we will all meet together. And we've stuck by it since he graduated from university. I have time to do that. So now over New Year's, we're all going on a Disney cruise together, just us three, the Philogene men.
Nice.
This is intentional, very intentional, to keep us together. I have time, I have the resources, and I am not interested in competing with people to say, oh, I don't have 1,000 apartments, I have 6,000 apartments. I could care less, honestly. Once you have the resources to have an impactful life towards your family and towards your community, you've done something good. You got to capitalize on that.
Very well said. Before we let you go, we've spoken about financial freedom and geographic and even purpose. I'd love for you to comment on relationship freedom. And I especially love this story of how you met your partners at Quattro. I've heard it from Aaron and Chad, but I'd love for you to speak on that and just, impart a piece of advice onto the audience, especially those that are getting ready to break away and maybe have to go find and develop new relationships. That can be a scary thing.
Right. And so I'll give the advice up front. The advice is, we're humans. We're a social creature. People need people to grow. You can grow on your own reading Google and listen to podcasts and things of that nature for a particular time. But people need people to grow, and you can collapse the learning curve and collapse fear, because all fear is a lack of knowledge. You need people to grow. So when I say freedom of relationships, I mean, I'm not talking about networking. I'm talking about things that are holding you back from meaningfully connecting with other people. If you're in a toxic romantic relationship and you're not allowed to go talk to people as a result or something like that, you don't have freedom of relationships. If your job keeps you at the office till 7:30 at night every night and you're exhausted, you don't have freedom to build relationships. We need them. The example that you were giving was I donated $5,000 to my now partner's charity, and we became friends, and that led to forming Quattro Capital, and now we've done 100 million in 12 months or so. I am always seeking meaningful relationships with people in spaces that I know nothing about. Someone who can teach me something. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room, which is a cliche. I don't know how to do philanthropic work in disadvantaged communities in certain countries. I got to find someone who does, and then add value to them and see how I can meaningfully impact that issue. Relationships matter. I'm glad you brought it up, because of all the tools we have in our tool belt, you don't know how to do something, find someone who does, and then find a way to help them and be part of their life in a meaningful way, and good things will wrap back around to you.
Love it. Maurice, where can people stay plugged in and connected with all the incredible work that you're doing and the journeys and explorations you're going to be coming on in the future.
Yeah. So, I mean, this stuff is more about life than anything. So those two platforms are LinkedIn and Instagram. So it's just Maurice Philogene for both. Quattro Capital can be found at the Quattro Way, QuattroWay.com. We are an add value syndication real estate firm. We buy large scale apartment complexes, improve them, and then share the profits with all of our investors. And then I'll just throw out and then I'm on podcast interviews all over. People can just Google Maurice Philogene. But I would just throw out all this stuff that I said. It all predicates back to freedom and accessing this planet the way that we're intended to. So when people do reach out, I try to have conversations. I love it. I'm not like we're supposed to help each other. You know what I mean?
Right.
So whatever works for you, whether it's that or email is just Maurice@thequattroway.com. I will do my best to reach back out because you can probably teach me something, and I need that as well.
Yeah, and I can second that. I mean, that's how we got connected was a mutual friend, and I reached out and you were very gracious and took 15 or 20 minutes. So we're going to have all of those links down below for you all as resources. Please reach out if this man has said anything that's impacted and or resonated with you. And before we let you go, Mo, I got just 3 more quick questions, a random round to have some fun with you. The first is, I'd love to know what your favorite mindset or spiritual exercise is.
Getting up at 4 a.m. It has never left. Don't get me wrong. I have my tired days. My alarm was set for 4 today. I don't think I got up until 4:50 or something like that. But there is so much so when I was doing all that stuff, the police, Accenture, I had to get up at 4 a.m. because I just couldn't get everything else done, right? So from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m., that's 4 hours. That's 20 hours a week, 80 hours a month. That's an extra 960 hours a year. You've created 5 weeks of time. If you add one more day of 4 hours, that 5 weeks becomes 7.14 weeks. I still get up at 4 a.m. and work out. That's the meditative state, is getting up at 4 a.m. and doing the hustle on the laptop, or like this morning, running on the Peloton like I did.
Love it. Favorite country and why?
I've been to too many. I have to say Turkey. I ran a field office for my federal law enforcement agency in Western Turkey in 2015 for 7 months or so. I learned about the Turkish culture, more Middle Eastern culture, but more so the Aegean and the Mediterranean region. And man, I found something that resonates with me, which is why I'm there a lot. People don't understand it. They think I'm going to go spend money and like, oh, you're just sitting by the beach. No, there is something about that region of the world that just makes my body happy. So Turkey for introducing me to it, but I am around the Mediterranean region a lot, which includes Turkey, Cyprus, Lebanon, Greece. I love that area.
That's beautiful. And last but not least, we would love to know one individual of color that's a founder or that's somebody that's living out their life's work that you'd love to refer onto the Dear BLK CEO podcast. It's all about relationships.
Man, there is a oh, give me a sec, his name will come back. As soon as you ask me the question, I know I'm meeting with him next Tuesday. It is Jamal Robinson. Do you know Jamal?
I do not know.
He is a very interesting guy. I'd love for you to talk with him. He runs EDW. I think it's called EDW, but it's an eyewear company.
Okay.
The way he started it and what he's doing, and he's partnered with can't remember his name, but one of the guys from the Dallas Cowboys. I love what this man has done with the eyewear business. It's not something typical you and I would think about, but the reason I stay connected to him is the way he did it and how he recognizes that business is something to improve his family and himself. It's not necessarily about money. Those are the types of people we want to tap into and support. So it'd be Jamal Robinson.
Beautiful. Mo, thank you so much for being here and just so graciously opening up and sharing your words of wisdom, the gems, man. We wish you nothing but continued success and happiness going forward, man.
I appreciate it, brother. Thanks for having me on.
Of course.